Yeah, so we're bowling things up with cricket on this Monday edition of the SportsMax Zone. The West Indies concluded their white ball tour of Sri Lanka with an impressive 8-wicket win over the hosts in a rain-affected third and final one-day international in Pallekele on Saturday. Now, with the playing conditions revised to 23 overs per side, mid-innings, Sri Lanka first posted 156 for 3 in their allotment on the back of a sizzling 22-ball 56 from wicketkeeper batter Kusa Mendes. Chasing a revised target of 195 in 23 overs, Evan Lewis served up a player of the match performance on his ODI return, smashing an unbeaten 102 from just 61 balls. Lewis had help from fellow left-hander Sherfin Rutherford, who scored a third consecutive half century on the tour, fifth in not out, as the pair took the West Indies home with minimal casualties at 196 for 2 with 6 balls to spare. The Caribbean side lost the series 2-1 despite the victory, and coach Darren Sammys gave a frank assessment of his team's performance.
And the way we bowled throughout the series has not been really up to the mark, you know, and we all know when we were challenged on spin-friendly wickets, our batsmen did not respond. So all in all, it's good to finish with an emphatic win heading into the England series, but a lot of learning from this trip.
Yeah, West Indies white ball coach Darren Sammys there. Our cricket analyst Nikhil Uttamchandani joins us via Zoom to give his assessment. He is already in Antigua and Barbuda for the start of the white ball tour of the Caribbean by the Englishmen. First match set for Thursday, and Nikhil will talk to us first about what happened in Sri Lanka. Nikhil, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Always great to have you on the show. Congrats again on the fabulous job that you did in Sri Lanka. But a losing effort for the West Indies, a good last match for them, and Evan Lewis was on fire, wasn't he?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lance. As we've discussed previously on the show, every win that comes in one international cricket now until 2027 is of massive importance. So it was important for the West Indies to get that win, even though they lost the series. And look, I still think people will say, you know, it was a 23-over game and it's sort of more suited to the West Indies and that T20 format that they played well. However, I think still there were some good positives to take out of the third game. I think the intent which they showed throughout the innings is something that they would like to see in the middle overs, especially when there's a full 50-over allotment. And then for someone like Evan Lewis to get 100, first of all, to not be in the format for 3 years and not really play much international cricket in the last 2 years. And for him to come back in just playing the T20 series, he did well there, got a 50 in the first game, and then to get 100 of that magnitude. I think it was a huge win for West Indies, Darren Sammys and Shai Hope, because remember, the two of them are the major selectors now. And they took a leap of faith. We haven't already seen Lewis play 50-over cricket at the list day level for the last couple of years. So it would have been a pick that would have been under scrutiny because he hasn't played much domestic cricket, but it showed the ability and why they've gone for someone of his skill set, and it was a much-needed performance.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you quickly about your take on Darren Sammys' assessment, the things he said post-game. Just to pause for a moment to tell our viewers that Rodri has been announced the 2024 Ballon d'Or winner, and suspicions early in the day that Vinicius wouldn't have gotten it now proven correct, because it's Rodri that wins the 2024 Ballon d'Or honour for Mariah Ramharak. Anyway, let's continue our cricket discussion, Nikhil, because Darren Sammys had things to say post-match, and he tried to put things in perspective. Your thoughts on his take on the series?
Yeah, honest assessment. Good to hear the transparency, and it's no secret that the batting against spin was abysmal. And I think you look around the world now, Lance, every team has got maybe one or even two world-class spinners, if not leg spinners. And as long as the West Indies continue to struggle against leg spin, teams will continue to throw leg spin at them. You look at this series upcoming now, England have got 3 leg spinners in their squad. Now, whether they play all 3 is another question. However, it just shows that teams are quite aware of their struggles. And if they want to be competitive, and people will say the 2027 World Cup is in South Africa and it won't turn. But if the West Indies want to be one of the world's best teams, and it's the same thing in the T20 format as well, they have to find that flexibility in all conditions. That is what the best teams in the world, like the Australias and the Indians to some extent do well. So I think let's not only focus on that World Cup, but let's focus on the West Indies becoming the best again. And it has to be becoming flexible in most conditions. And the batting against spin is the point of focus now. They've got the power. I think the new ball in the power play, the batting against the new ball has improved. But in the batting aspect, it is in the middle overs where a lot of spin is being bowled, and it's the ability to rotate strike and do something else other than just find the boundary.
Yeah, a lot has been said, Nikhil, about the job of the coach, because while he has the job of strategically preparing his team for international cricket, Darren Sammys, there's been this long-felt assessment that the West Indies coach shouldn't be teaching players how to do things. I say that to ask this because is it that our culture or technical development from teenage years up to seniors, is there a deficiency in how players are taught to play spin? And I would ask after that, can Darren Sammys do anything about it?
Yeah, to be honest, Lance, it's something that, I mean, very recently I had the conversation with batting coach Floyd Reefer. It is very hard to, as you just pointed out, very hard to teach guys skills and do skills work on a series like a Sri Lanka tour where you get there, you rest for one day, you play the next day, you rest for a couple in between. And as you said, I think it is in tournaments like a Super 50 or throughout the 12 months where you have the contracted players, 90 around the region it is, where guys are expected to go back into their franchise and work on those deficiencies and work on those things. It probably is a few things. One, a lack of exposure to those types of conditions. Two, I would say lack of exposure to that quality of spin. We have spin in the Caribbean, but that quality is another level. When you go to Sri Lanka, not only is it turning, but the spinners are able to get the most out of the surfaces. And then three, I would probably say the ability of coaches in the Caribbean to sort of get the best out of the players and know exactly what players need to do in terms of to evolve their game. And I think it's a responsibility of the players as well to want to have a growth mindset and to want to learn. I mean, I look at someone like Sherfane Rutherford. For him to come into one-day international cricket and bat the way he did, someone who's played so much T20 cricket, hasn't faced a lot of deliveries, but it shows that he puts in a lot of work outside of just the matches, knowing that a series like this would come up where he would have to absorb pressure, would face a lot of spin. And I mean, it helps that he comes from Guyana as well. But I think we can do more as players to help evolve. And small, simple things like having better options against spin, maybe using your feet a bit more, sweeping the ball more. It's things you don't often see in our domestic setup. But talking to Floyd Reefer and some of the senior heads around the region, they believe we have to have better options against spin, and we don't have enough.
Yeah, and you know, as we talk about developing the players, working on technique and tactics and all of that, Nikhil, I instantly think about the youngster that made his debut, 17-year-old Joel Andrew, and how he's one of those players that, you know, you'd feel like you want to put in that extra work with him, especially because, you know, he's now being introduced into this sort of senior setup. He's very teachable at this age. I like to think, you know, he's young. He'd be able to soak up all these different things. What did you think about him on this Sri Lanka tour?
Well, Mariah, many people won't know this, but Joel Andrew batted a couple of times in this series. I was fortunate to be there and see it. And I think the West Indian coaches threw him into the deep end because he faced Alzari Joseph, Ford, Jaden Seals, and Shamar Joseph, and all of them had a new ball in one practice. And everybody, all the players in the other nets, everybody had sort of an eye on that net to see how he would react. And I think he was a bit timid at first, naturally, but he started to open up really nicely towards the end. And he's a very soft-spoken, introverted type person. But it just showed me how much an experience like this could do, because after that maybe 20-minute batting period, he was then in conversation with Alzari about a shot that he could play, or then a Darren Sammys or Floyd Reefer came over to him. I think that experience is invaluable, and you don't get that from, you know, watching on TV or being in the Leeward Islands setup. So I think that was the reason why, again, with an eye on the 2027 World Cup, the vision is if he plays or is in the West Indies squad for 4 years, by 2027, he'll be in his prime. So I think it's a good way to maybe ease some of our younger players in, and I hope we can do it with a few more of our younger players as well.
Yeah, very, very important. And with the time that we have left, Nikhil, now all of our attention will turn into that series versus England that's taking place in the Caribbean. What are you looking forward to see most for this series when it comes to West Indies cricket and, most importantly, its development?
More hundreds, Maria. I think you look at the record of the West Indies in the last 2 years. I mean, 34 one-day internationals, and now we've only got 600s and 29 50s. I think we need to have more convergence. It's a problem at the regional level as well. There's an over-dependence on Shai Hope. So I'm looking at guys in that top order to convert and get big hundreds. It helped last year when they chased 325 against England and Shai Hope got 100. But Kenna Lewis, Kenna Rutherford, Kenna Brandon King, other guys start to get runs consistently to become one of the better batting lineups in the world, because you can't rely on one guy who averages 150 in wins, and then when you lose just 20, it's never going to be a good plan for winning consistently at that level. So more hundreds is what I'm looking for in these next two series.
Yeah, and before we go there, Nikhil, it's good that they're starting this series with ODIs, coming from the ODIs in Sri Lanka, but there is the general feeling that the West Indies are good against England in the Caribbean. So would you then pick the West Indies to win this three-match series?
I think when I look at the venues, Lance, two in Antigua, one in Barbados, good batting conditions. And also I think England on demand. Obviously, they're missing Brook, they're missing Duckett, no Butler because of the injury. I think they probably would start as favourites. And that's just, as you said, based on history and how well they've done against England. But England can't be taken lightly because we saw well they did against Australia. They've got a few really important players in that 11 and a few that are looking to get back into England's natural one international team as well. So I think it'll be a good series, but West Indies maybe start as slight favourites.
Yeah, OK, Nikhil, stay right where you are, because when we come back from the break, we're going to continue talking some cricket. The CG United Super 50 tournament starting in TNT on Tuesday with the defending champions in action. You'll assess those teams and the tournament for us immediately after the break. Back in a moment.